Friendo, Steve here.
And Larson.
And welcome back to Going in Raw Count Out. On this episode, we are talking reinvention in WWE.
You know, you and I know a thing or two about reinvention. We used to do video game stuff on YouTube.
We used to do video game stuff on the YouTube.
And then we had to reinvent ourselves to do wrestling stuff on YouTube.
Much like WWE, Machinima laid us off. We got our future endeavors, our releases, and then we had to reinvent ourselves. But by the time we could have come back to Machinima died. So, so we they're gone, and we're still here. We're talking about. I forget what prompted this list again. I
think it was the last round of releases. You know, whenever there's talent that are unfortunately released by WWE. It's a bummer to lose job, having been there and whatnot. It sucks. It's not fun because there's so much unknown.
Yeah, of course.
Historically, we have seen in the past where wrestlers have gotten released by WWE. And either they go to another prominent company, they go around the independents, and kind of experiment, try new things when it comes to their character, their presentation, and reinvent themselves. Yeah. And a lot of times, they achieve great success elsewhere, whether it be years past in WCW, whether it's currently in AEW. They might even go back to WWE in some cases.
Yeah.
Some people might even start companies.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But no, absolutely. When we saw these releases happen, we thought, you know what? Maybe we can be of service. Maybe we can be of help. Let's put out a list that might inspire some of these people who have been released, or I'll be honest with you, anybody in our audience. You know, plenty of the friendos know what it's like to be laid off, released, fired, what have you. But that's not the end. It could be just the beginning. And for these 10 superstars, for these 10 wrestlers, that's exactly what it was. Let's go ahead and dive into it. Number 10.
10.
Matt Hardy. Now, Matt Hardy he's known for reinvention. And in fact, he did so several times, even within the WWE. I thought it was interesting, obviously him and Jeff got their start at 16, 17 years old. I think they had some tryout matches in WWE before they were even 18, or at least Jeff did. But of course, after the Team Extreme stuff, Matt Hardy V1 had some success until about 2005. He was released, but then kind of almost immediately, not immediately, but within the same year, brought back because of the Edge and Lita controversy. That gave him a whole other 5 years in the company until 2010. He was released, and he sort of did, the Matt Hardy thing until about 2016, 2017.
2016 is when, the major reinvention.
Yes.
The Broken Universe stuff, which, at that time when he was an Impact was in rough shape in 2016, 2017, even though the talent roster was actually pretty good.
Yeah, the funny thing is their roster was always stacked. It was just the stigma of being, talk about reinvention. Impact, for better and oftentimes for worse, they would find themselves on sort of mandatory reinvention due to changing ownerships, changing management, and
TV stations,
changing creative staff, changing TV stations, absolutely. And that sort of gave Impact as a reputation, for not being the most stable company in the world, ironically enough, because they've been around now for over 20 years.
Yeah, more than 20 years, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, at the time, like you said, their roster was stacked, but they didn't have the best reputation. And Matt Hardy, furthering his feud with his brother Jeff, appeared as a Willow impersonator of some sort, and then he was unmasked to reveal the broken Matt Hardy. And it was interesting, and I wonder, and honestly, I've probably read or heard interviews with him about the broken stuff, but he started diving into the cinematic aspect of pro wrestling, and I wonder if part of that was because he had put his body through so much over the years. This was an opportunity to exercise his creative muscle, not by doing crazy shit in the ring, but by being more interesting and producing these sort of mini films, these short films in the place of matches, and ended up kind of revolutionizing that idea because Not only did he eventually take that idea to WWE, but that idea came in very handy during pandemic when WWE and a lot of companies started doing cinematic matches.
Yeah, yeah, and going back to the broken mat stuff, really putting a positive spotlight on Impact for the first time in a long time. It was the talk of the internet wrestling world when those broken little cinematic matches and vignettes started airing on Impact. You know, there's so many aspects of it that was so new and fresh and creative, and it had such a great homemade quality to it. I mean, like it felt like that he was really pushing the limits of what he could do in a positive way. You know, the Vanguard 1 stuff where the hologram pops out of the top of it. It looks kind of cheesy, but it feels like it helps broaden the scope of the world. Just the aesthetics that lended itself to how he put that all together. I don't know. It had a very B movie quality.
Yeah, exactly.
In the best way possible.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It was very sort of kitsch, sort of John Waters, Roger Corman, but like you said, in a positive way. There is an audience for that, and there is a charm to that, you know, especially given that he roped in his entire family, his wife, comma, also Senor Benjamin, his wife Rebby, also Senor Benjamin, and even his kids, and even inanimate objects around the Hardy compound.
Yeah, Skarsgård. Updated boat.
Right, exactly. Took on a personality of its own, and really produced some fantastic stuff across. I mean, talk about the original Forbidden Door, because this
promotions, right?
Impact. I'm almost positive Ring of Honor. I know they had a feud with the Hardys in Ring of Honor, and I'm pretty sure they were in the Broken Gimmicks at the time. I forget if Ring of
with
Honor.
The Young Bucks. I don't know if they did it. I don't know if they did a broken style.
I don't know if they did. I think the idea was they were, if I'm not mistaken, they were supposed to, and then WWE snatched up the Hardys.
Yeah, that could be.
I think that was the deal. But yeah, Impact, WWE, and then of course AEW did that stuff as well. There might have been another promotion involved. I forget. I don't know if Ring of Honor did any of the broken stuff.
Yeah,
but yeah, no. I mean, it linked many promotions and many acts. You know, the New Day, Bray Wyatt, they all got involved in the broken stuff. No, I'm sorry. The New Day didn't. The New Day were part of the Wyatt compound stuff. But
it was
also
Bray.
The Wyatt compound stuff was kind of a response to the broken stuff. So it had high influence, and Matt Hardy's continual reinvention, because he's done so several times within AEW, in a way that's, I think, a little bit, Tony Khan, as he's prone to do, sort of will bounce from thing to thing to thing. So it doesn't seem like there's been a big focus. Like back when Impact did it, it was like, okay, this is going to be a focus because we know that we have something here. Let's let this guy run with it. And even in the case of WWE, because there was such a buzz about the Hardys, but there was also that underlying buzz about, ooh, he can bring the broken stuff there. And then eventually they did, and WWE put some focus on that. AEW had the firm deletion, but that's been kind of it with the broken stuff.
For the most part. Yeah, it seemed like in both WWE and AEW, he kind of got one opportunity to really do the full cinematic take on his character. You know, there was always that push and pull in WWE. You know, are you nostalgia act as Hardys, or are we going to let you do something new and interesting?
Right. Yeah.
And there's always a portion of the crowd that was calling for the broken stuff, but never really seemed like WWE was fully invested in all that.
I mean, it's, I wonder, it does seem, as we're about to see in this next entry, if maybe, number one, we know that Vince McMahon and his whims would change day to day. And I can only imagine, his fondness for what the Hardys meant to the WWE back at their peak, versus this weird cinematic stuff, which might not have really, fallen completely with Vince McMahon in terms of him understanding what it was about. But, the fact that
I guarantee you had no idea what was going on with any of that.
The fact that they did eventually, at least give us that one, I forget what they even called it. But yeah, no, and Bray Wyatt got to get involved with that, and they seem to really have a lot of fun with it. Bray Wyatt, for everything he did in WWE, it actually did seem like the one time when he got to loosen up a little bit and have some fun with stuff as opposed to always be this foreboding. I mean, obviously, with the exception, of course, of the Cena stuff, because clearly Bray Wyatt was having a ton of fun.
Clearly he was having an absolute blast doing that stuff.
Yeah, the Muscle Man dance was great. Anyways, let's go ahead and move on. Number 9. Athena. So I did way too much research into her, and
I see links to 4 YouTube videos here.
Well, so right now in Ring of Honor, so as part of the research, I re-upped my Honor Club membership, Larson. I am a card-carrying Honor Club member now.
Wow.
And I watched the latest Ring of Honor. You remember how when Ring of Honor started, and this is totally a tangent, but we're a podcast, everybody was like, you guys going to cover Ring of Honor? You going to cover Ring of Honor? Yeah. And how nobody really does that anymore?
No.
I kind of know why. Because their TV show, I'm not going to call it a dumping ground, but in a certain way, it's kind of a dumping ground. So I guess I did. She is absolutely, number 1, on this latest episode of Ring of Honor, literally the only champion to show up.
Yeah.
And she does seem to be a cornerstone of Ring of Honor. She's featured on there in vignettes. She's got this whole thing where Billy Starks is like her protege, and there's like a push and pull there. She's roped Lexi into it, and she's developed a minions. They're her minions.
Yeah.
Training school, MIT, Minions in Training, not to be confused with the
MIT in the Boston, Massachusetts area. Yes.
The Technological
Massachusetts
Institute, exactly.
Institute of Technology. Yes.
Right. But it's wildly entertaining stuff. And so I went back and I looked at an interview she did with Chris Van Vliet back in about a year ago. And she talks about, all the frustration. She goes into detail about the frustrations there in WWE. At one point, they had offered her, according to her, like 5 times what she had currently been making in WWE to stick around. But the place was so miserable. It was around the time I think 2.0 was getting its start. Triple H had disappeared. Laurinaitis showed up and told everybody to start showing, more skin. And she was like, this sucks. And, she was just being yanked around. They called up Shotzi away from her tag team and put her with Tegan Nox. She says that there are writers in Raw and SmackDown who didn't even know they were a team. And I'm like, why are you not watching the product? Like, that's insane.
I know.
Anyways.
But if you see how NXT calls were booked for a number of years, it makes sense that apparently main roster creative had no idea what they were doing in NXT.
Right. Absolutely. And so anyways, fast forward to her debuting for AEW and then going to Ring of Honor, becoming the champion there. Heel turn, and she's off to the races now. It's honestly one of those situations now where she is clearly having so much fun. She's this sort of like a pseudo like Roman Reigns. She's like manipulative. She's got people under her thumb, and she's using them, and it's really wildly entertaining. She does it with, a good mix of, a sense of humor. They do these like training vignettes, which are wildly hilarious. And it just seems like something that she came up with, that she's running with. And there's this thread in AEW now where you can see certain wrestlers taking the creative freedom they're given and really running with it, not waiting for anybody to say, okay, here's what to do, here's what not to do. And it's really refreshing to see. It's a complete reinvention. And it's the kind of thing, honestly, that should be on AEW television.
It absolutely should. 1,000% should. The thing with Athena Ember Moon in NXT and on the main roster, she's always been an absolutely phenomenal wrestler.
Oh, she's one of the best. Phenomenal. Absolutely, yeah.
One of the best. And like her presentation all through her WWE tenure, whether it be in NXT or on main roster, was always great. The music was great. Entrance was great. The whole presentation was like a 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
And they could never seemingly, from a creative standpoint, crack what her character was.
Yeah.
For a while in NXT, she has this huge, larger-than-life presentation with the theme and the entrance and all that. And they tried to create like a really grounded character. But at no point was there a bridge to get from one to the other.
You're right.
And they had the fallen goddess period, but they never really seemed to really figure out who her character was, regardless of what brand she was on. I'm happy now, finally, she's in AEW, Ring of Honor, and getting the latitude to try things out, to experiment, to discover who this character is. And it seems like Ring of Honor is basically her show at this juncture.
Yeah, it really is. Like when you watch the episode, dude, I was kind of shocked. I don't know exactly when this latest episode was filmed as it pertains to Wrestle Dream, but or when I'm sorry, Grand Slam when Claudio lost to Eddie, but well, no, you know what? Well, at the very least, he's in the opening package, like there's a still of him holding the title.
Yeah.
No Eddie, no Young Bucks and Hangman, obviously no MJF, no Joe. None of the champions. It doesn't feel like an actual promotion. But then you have Athena, who does, like, in her way, tie a lot of the stuff together. And it's a shame that it's not treated, at least in this episode, like an actual promotion.
Joe's on the TV show on a somewhat regular basis. I've seen things on Twitter with him in it.
That's entirely, I've seen that as well. This past episode, I did not see him unless it's 2 hours long. I was fast forwarding through the infinite number of matches they had. But going back to Ember Moon, you're absolutely right about what had happened to her, and to hear her tell her story, especially pre Triple H taking over, it was clear, man, with so many of those people that Vince was just doing too much. There wasn't the connectivity between the writers and the product and the wrestlers. And I'm sure she had plenty of ideas, but I really doubt that she had any of the freedom to explore those ideas. And if it's one of those things that we've heard endlessly about the last 5 years of Vince's era. You start running with something and then they shut it down. They're like, and in her case, okay, we're going to turn you heel. They started to do that. She was off TV for 4 weeks. It's a start and stop thing. She had a match with Cora Jade on 205 back when that was a thing. She sort of did a semi-heel turn. People were wondering about it, and then she's not on TV. And so you got to wonder, like, okay, somebody who has a lot of ideas, but just is part of this absolutely Kafka-esque machine.
Yeah.
Where none of those ideas are really going to be given the time and energy and patience to grow. And if you do have an idea, as we saw with Mustafa Ali, if you have an idea, it might make one vignette, then not get off the ground. People don't understand it because, they'd have to see it first. So it is really a story of just absolute frustration, but it's so great to see her in Ring of Honor completely and totally with a character that is 100% realized.
Yep.
And yeah, I don't know. She seemed to be a favorite of Triple H's, though. I wonder if at some point, maybe it'd be a situation where Vince was completely gone, if she'd ever consider going back and maybe getting back on cable TV, or maybe at some point Tony Khan would actually put her on cable TV because she's really terrific.
That would be ideal because she's phenomenal.
She gets lots of matches there too. Like I went through her cage match listing. She had like 6 matches in the month of August in Ring of Honor and between Ring of Honor and AEW. And that's a normal thing. Like she gets matches like almost every single week, and then she'll be on like a random rampage. And so she is getting plenty of wrestling time in AEW. But that is the kind of thing that can completely and totally add to the cable TV aspect of it. But Tony Khan doesn't focus on women's wrestling. So.
Nope.
Yeah. Anyways, moving on. Number 8. Tony Storm.
Portrait of a Star. Tony Storm.
The illustrious Tony Storm.
The illustrious Tony Storm. So this reinvention is probably the most recent on this list, I think, within the last few months. So Tony Storm, she effectively quit WWE. After I think at least publicly, what we saw on TV was the pie to the face incident on episode of SmackDown. I think it's Christmas Eve 2021, and she had this to say. Told this to Renee Paquette about why she left. Quote, "I didn't feel appreciated, and I just felt like WWE at times didn't have very much respect for me. I feel like over time they just crushed my love for wrestling. It just wasn't even wrestling anymore. You're not even allowed to say wrestling." So she debuted in AEW March of 2022 and was like immediately pushed as a star.
Yeah.
She still kept most of the aspects of the gimmick that she had dating back to what she was doing even prior to going to NXT UK. And it was during her time in the Outcast, and once she lost the AEW Women's Championship, that it kind of to Hikaru Shida, that it kind of really started falling apart for her.
Yeah.
And she became this Hollywood actress of the 1950s. You're familiar with the film Sunset Boulevard.
Right. Yeah.
It seemed to really take an inspiration from that movie.
Yeah.
And it was so refreshing and new, and it felt vital.
Yeah.
What she was doing is so different than anything else. And you mentioned with Athena, where wrestlers are given seemingly a certain amount of creative latitude in AEW that they're not in WWE. And again, Toni Storm's an instance where she came up with an idea. I don't know. I assume it was pitched, it was approved, and she's allowed to run with it.
Yeah.
And thus far, week after week, it's home run after home run after home run. She knows this character. She knows how to portray this character in promos, in interviews, in the ring. And it all adds up to this really awesome package that is completely different than what she'd been doing at any other point in her career.
Yeah. Dude, it's going to be interesting to see how many other wrestlers who have a number of years in their career already end up in AEW, whether it's from WWE or they're coming from an Impact New Japan situation, who understand what they want to do and are able to do it versus wrestlers who are used to being told what to do. And then they get to AEW and they flounder. And I think that's one of the issues with a lot of the wrestlers you see in AEW who might not end up on TV. And Athena's not one of them, but that's basically because women's wrestling isn't really appreciated there. But wrestlers who can't come up with something solid or don't have the ability to pitch it properly to give it a proper go. Toni Storm was already popular, and so she probably has that in her favor. But as soon as you see her, I've never seen, and I've watched a couple of her promos from like Stardom, like pre NXT. Some of her promos in NXT, like you remember the last run in NXT when she was a bad guy.
Oh, it's good stuff.
There were a lot of elements of what we see now. Not necessarily the derivative of the 1950s stuff, but the personality is there. When she was a face, she was bizarrely boring. They did not know like what tack to take with her character. Some people are just better as bad guys. Yeah. She found something with this that, they produce these interviews now with RJ City and, the catchphrase with the shoe. And it's all just really inspired stuff, and you're watching something now that is very interesting. It's highly entertaining, and it makes you not want to turn the channel. And that's really what you need in wrestling, is just put something on the TV that's captivating, that you're not going to change the channel, and you've probably got a winner on your hands. Yeah. And it's so great to see her find that in AEW. Now, if only we can get management to devote more time to the women's wrestling aspect of things, then that's sort of the shame too. It's like when you see the same thing with Athena, it's like, she's plenty of time on Ring of Honor and that's great. But is there a ceiling there because of how they approach women's wrestling? I just don't know. And would the Toni Storm character, would that translate in a place like WWE? And I personally would, I don't care where I see it. I just want to see it. Yeah. But I don't know. I would find it difficult to believe that she would go back there, given that she said they completely crushed my love of pro wrestling. Yeah. But like everything else, if Vince isn't around to crush that love, will people reconsider and take another shot with WWE? It remains to be seen, I guess.
It does remain to be seen. It really does. And I guess it probably depend on each individual's experience. In the case of Toni Storm, or who we're about to talk about next, not to say it's an impossibility they'd ever return to WWE, but given their experience there, maybe not entirely likely.
Yeah, right. Before we continue on with number 7, Larson, want to remind the people out there, if you're watching this, we're trying to hit a certain subscriber number. Right now, we're at 198,140 something, I think. And we're trying to get to 198,891, which is a palindrome. We're at 149 right now. And so we're asking you for your help. If you're new here, if you're the first time you're seeing it, hit that subscribe button and the notify bell next to it so you're always notified of new Going In Raw content. I'll also hit that like button. We also have a secondary channel called Friendo Club Wrestling, and we do shorter form content there. We offer up our own predictions and star ratings for upcoming and previous pay-per-views. We have a bunch of like little quiz games that we do there as well. It's a lot of fun, so go check that out as well. And yeah, we also have a Patreon, patreon.com/Steve and Larson. We offer up bonus episodes. We offer up question threads for our podcast, and we offer up the big predictions challenges, which we do every single month. And you can also get that stuff by clicking join right here on the youtube.com/Steve and Larson. If you're listening to the audio realm, do us a favor, hit that, give us a rating, review, or a comment. Really helps as well.
Yes, it does.
Let's move
Moving on.
Number 7.
7.
Jon Moxley.
So I wonder if this is less like a complete total reinvention of what he was doing as Dean Ambrose and somewhat a return to form from what he was doing prior to his time at WWE, plus working in aspects of what he learned with the Fed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, because it's obvious that from a creative standpoint, he was not satisfied working with WWE. Mm-hmm. He wanted to get away from being, you know, kooky, quirky Dean Ambrose and be a more intense, violent character.
Yeah.
Seemingly, Vince had no interest. I mean, Vince, as Mox told Chris Jericho on Talk is Jericho, Vince said to him, "I know who you are."
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The temerity of Vince and Kenny McMahon telling a wrestler he knows better who that person is, who that character is, regardless. He got out of WWE and then went to AEW, and now seemingly has carte blanche to do seemingly whatever he wants. He is one of the cornerstones of the company. Mm-hmm. You could make the case he might be the most important wrestler in all of the AEW, especially if you take out the Elite from consideration.
Oh no, I think even considering them, I think it's like him and Jericho. I think they're the two most. I think historically speaking, anyways.
Yeah, and it seems like he is the most dependable guy in that company. Mm-hmm. If anything happens, any sort of crisis arises, you turn to Mox, he'll step in.
Right. Yeah.
And he'll step up.
Yeah.
You know, from a character standpoint, you don't really see a whole lot of, except that one bit where he's trying to put on his shirt after he had a match and he was all bloody. You don't see the comedic aspect of what he does very often these days.
It's more intensity. Organic. It's more organic.
Yeah. When you saw some of it when he was teaming with Eddie. Mm-hmm. It's intense and it's violent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he's all about going in the ring, beating people up, getting busted open, and putting on a lot of times these really crazy violent matches. Not to the degree he was obviously back in his CZW days where he's taking, you know, like garden tools to the head.
I wouldn't put it past him to go back there, to be honest with you. He does seem like the dude loves to bleed, obviously.
Yeah.
He likes it. I mean, we've seen his work in GCW, which I think he's dialing back on now. But because he seems to kind of have gotten a lot of that out of his system. But still, you know, Mox is Mox. And, you know, you got the feeling, number one, it's interesting how much success Dean Ambrose had in WWE, given that before WWE, I don't know why anybody thought Mox would be a good fit for WWE.
Yeah, I know.
But it seemed to be a logical, I mean, in terms of a career trajectory, if you've done everything you can do in the indie realm, you sort of go up to WWE. That's what you sort of do. Mm-hmm. And people saw that. They, you know, packaged him as part of the Shield. And there was a lot of chatter back then. I remember you and I used to talk about, he could be sort of the successor to Stone Cold. I think maybe that's what they saw with him. And you know, at the time, it just didn't seem like they were interested in having a Stone Cold that was anywhere near the Stone Cold that of the past, because it was in the PG era. And so you couldn't really do a lot of the stuff that Stone Cold was doing. And so then he just turns into, oh, he's a quirky guy, you know, and the violence that we used to see, or at least the intensity we used to see with Stone Cold, which really was his thing, it just wasn't embraced with the Dean Ambrose character. And yet through his charisma and his sort of, I don't know, attitude, if you will, the crowd, the people embraced him, and he got all the way up to WWE champion. It was a pretty popular one.
Yep.
And then we saw what we saw sort of an unlobotomized Dean Ambrose, aka Mox, when he finally arrived. You know, when he asked for his contract ran out. His contract expired. Yeah. And ended up outside WWE, and like you said, he's the cornerstone. He's the ace of the company.
Yeah. Yep.
Moving on to number 6.
6.
Swerve Strickland. Talk about a guy who has embraced, and it's funny because I feel like with some of the people we've already talked about, Swerve was like one of the first ones that I really noticed that it's like, oh, this guy came in and then obviously made some sort of realization that if I don't push this, I'm going to get lost in the shuffle. And the guy has just completely, and I don't even know if this is necessarily a reinvention from WWE. It's much like Athena and Tony Storm, where it's, I know what I want to do and I couldn't get it done there. And now we're seeing what that is. Although there has been a physical reinvention. The guy has gained 20 pounds of muscle or so.
Yeah, 25, 30 pounds of muscle. Yeah.
Over the last couple months. And he is fully realizing what he can be. And AEW is giving him the freedom to do that. And look at where he is. He's one of the most exciting characters in AEW right now. He's taking off. He's getting these high-profile matches. He just got a high-profile win over Hangman Adam Page, a former world champion. And the sky's the limit for this guy because of what he has, because of his own ambition and his own creativity.
Yeah, I don't know if while he was in WWE, if he'd ever get the opportunity to be this kind of menacing heel that he is in AEW right now. I know he was a heel at various points in his tenure in WWE, but I don't know if he would ever been given the opportunity to portray the character he has now. And go to the lengths that he, like the segment where he and AR Fox go to Nick Wayne's garage and bust him open, bleeding everywhere. AR Fox is a piece of glass to Nick Wayne's throat. Like, you can't do the WWE won't let you do that stuff.
No.
And those kind of segments, just there's an aura about Swerve. You know, and it's not very often that you have a heel that's menacing and dangerous.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
In the world of professional wrestling these days, it feels like this guy is going to mess you up. And it's great that he's getting that opportunity here because he's hitting it out of the park every week. And like this back and forth he's had with Hangman prior to their match, where he got in Hangman's head just by saying, "You haven't had new gear in a year. Where's your merch on Shop AEW?" And he knew how to push Hangman's buttons.
Yeah.
And it's just great to see someone who's that tactical, who's that menacing. And there's so many more opportunities, I feel like, with this approach to his character as opposed to what he was doing in WWE. It's going to open up so many more doors for him, I feel like, hopefully.
Yeah.
If given the opportunity. But, you know, as we see now, following this win with Hangman, hopefully this is the start. This huge win is the start of something massive for Swerve going forward.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. And again, you know, a guy who's, you know, taking his own, you know, able to sort of chart his own path and do it so successfully. It's a lot of fun to see that.
It is. It definitely is.
All right, let's move on to number 5. Miro. Now this guy is up there, him and like Brody Lee, and it's such a shame because Brody Lee totally would have been on this list as well had he not, you know, passed. But that was a hell of a reinvention as well. Yeah. But in terms of what we saw in WWE, and I don't even know what kind of career he had prior to WWE, but he just sort of came out of nowhere, I think. But to see bringing the Redeemer character to AEW, he showed up and he was the best man. It was like, what? This is what you guys have for him? Like, he seems, you know, again, I'll use the word lobotomized, and then, but there was always that like sense of, there's something off about him. What is this all about?
Oh, it was balled up violence within him when he was the best man. You knew he was just going to explode at some juncture. Yeah.
And then he turns into this religious nut job, and this guy's got some of the best promos you see on TV when he's actually on TV. It's a absolutely shocking reinvention of a character who you could always tell that Rusev was like, again, they didn't really know what to do with them. The foreign heel thing only goes so far in you know, this day and age. And he had excellent chemistry with Lana, and then they broke that up, and then he was doing the Lashley stuff. And it's like, you guys have no idea what to do with this guy. And in AEW, I have no idea. I'm really kind of curious. I'd imagine it's him. The Redeemer character is such a quantum leap from what we had in WWE.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. It's hard to believe this is the same performer.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we saw glimpses of him being fairly clever and creative in WWE. You know, like the feud with Dolph was awful.
Yeah.
Awful when Lana, you know, left him as his manager. The only bright spot was Miro, was Rusev. The Dog Ziggler stuff.
Well,
it was
just
little details, but it was like,
Yeah.
this is clever. You're trying to do something with this, even though it's garbage.
You could you could tell he was just trying to make, you know, chicken salad out of chicken shit. And it was like you said, it was little clever asides. That's like, man, there's something more there, isn't it?
Yeah.
But you knew you were never going to get it. Like they were never going to nail that. And then again, an AEW shows up and, you know, once he starts doing the Redeemer stuff, it's like, oh, this is what we could have had. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
And
exactly.
physically, he reinvented himself. I mean, he became phenomenal shape. He became in phenomenal shape. Yeah, and then the level of violence. Unfortunately, it seemed to be a case where, again, the character, in order to sort of, I think, fulfill the destiny of the character, the stated goals of the character, you got to have a certain number of wins, and he has to actually succeed for it to work. And therein lied apparently some sort of creative miscommunication or an impasse, I guess, where he ended up off TV because Tony Khan was like, well, no, you're going to have to lose at some point. You're going to have to lose some feuds against some high profile people. Maybe Tony Khan just didn't see him for whatever reason, you know, at the top. And so he had a ceiling in mind for him. I don't know, man. I look at those promos and I'm like, shoot this guy to the top.
I know, without a doubt. He's one of the most interesting characters in all of professional wrestling. You know, it's nice that we've gotten well past the days of you know, most wrestlers being a tough guy who likes to fight.
Yeah,
and we have some really interesting characters with some real depth and complexity to them.
Yeah,
and it's great that Miro's getting an opportunity to showcase a character that I assume is his own creation.
Yeah, I would think so.
And it's, you know, especially when he had the TNT title, just week after week when he wasn't having matches, there's all these really great promos, such rich language and allusions, you know, both religious and more carnal varieties, you know?
Yeah, well, that therein lied the true creativity, is that in one promo he can captivate you with the poetic violence that was coming out of his mouth, but then also make you chuckle with, you know, referencing his hot, flexible wife. Like that's really, really good fodder for entertainment right there.
It really is. And you know, he along the lines of Swerve is when he was a heel. I think he's kind of in babyface territory now, but when Miro was a heel, menacing, dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah.
Never knew what he was going to do.
Yeah.
And it was awesome. It was so refreshing to see him come to AEW, come up with something so inspired.
Yeah.
After all the garbage he had to deal with in WWE.
This is the kind of character that I wonder could end up working. And I would suspect that if Vince and Triple H saw, because let's be honest, the Redeemer character has not been properly used in AEW.
No, like, it's tip of the iceberg. Yeah.
It is. There has been moments and I pointed this out before. My favorite moment of his is his match against Darby. Well, this is like my favorite Darby moment, but it involved him. And Darby looks at Sting, and Sting just gives him this. There's a TNT title match, and Sting just gives him this look like, you ain't winning this one, and that's okay. Yep. You gotta live with that. You can't win them all. And then, you know, Miro beats him. But that kind of force of nature really wasn't harnessed as an idea by AEW much past like that TNT title stuff. Yeah. And that's an absolute bummer. But it is the kind of thing that, and honestly, I don't know if he'd end up being a depth guy in WWE, because it sort of is like, I don't know, to me personally, a cooler, more intense version of what Karrion Kross does in a different way. But Karrion Kross he tries to be, the character supposed to be kind of a force of nature. I might get pinned in the ring, but you're going to go through hell to do it, and you're going to be changed after the fact.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if they can somehow capture that same thing with Miro, whether it's in AEW or if he goes back to WWE as that type of character, although I'm really curious to see if they can focus their efforts doing something interesting with the Lana aspect or the CJ aspect of things now. Although I don't remember when the last time they were on TV. Were they on TV on Dynamite last week?
Not together. CJ was on Collision, was watching Andrade's match.
Oh,
backstage, taking notes.
okay. That could be cool. So yeah, it remains to be seen if they'll really be able to actually focus and tell a good story that has a beginning, middle, and end and continues on from there. But
yes,
we'll find out. Anyways, moving on. Number 4. Matt Cardona. Man.
Deathmatch King, Matt Cardona.
The indie god, Matt Cardona. Man, oh man. It was honestly like, I don't know when it was, but whenever he got released by WWE, talk about a guy that I had no idea.
2020 got released.
Okay, it was 2020. Okay.
Yeah.
I had no, do you know what month was it? Was it during pandemic?
April 15th. Yeah.
Oh,
2020.
wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that was the big, when it's like, oh, there's a pandemic now. We're going to release everybody. To watch Matt Cardona from being Zack Ryder.
Woo.
And go straight to GCW as like this cheesy internet champion, former WWE guy. The intelligence it takes and the creativity it takes to go in there. His thought is, I'm the most WWE guy there is. He walks into GCW, the least WWE company there is.
Yeah.
Oh my God. As this arrogant piece of shit. I'm too good for all of you people. And then to go through the death match and win their championship, an absolute stroke of genius. And to see what he's done via the total package. I'm not talking about Lex Luger, but the wrestling figure pod, the vlogs, the stuff he was doing with his wife before she went to WWE and now is doing with Steph DeLander. All that stuff, wildly successful, interesting, and creative. And I never it's all there. The recipe's there because he was getting himself over from YouTube before anybody was.
Exactly. I mean, again, it's another wrestler with a history of reinvention. He was an edgehead.
Yeah, right.
Early in his WWE tenure.
Yeah.
He was off TV. He was like, I'm going to get myself over.
Mm-hmm.
And then, started doing the Zack Ryder stuff, the internet champion stuff. So it's there. It's been there.
Yeah.
And, it's just kind of an interesting take to see someone who is like seemingly the most sports entertainment wrestler there is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Get into the deathmatch stuff and succeed at it and get over doing it.
Yeah.
And now has forged his own path for himself where he's traveling around the world just doing wildly creative stuff. He's an Impact. He's an NWA. Apparently he went to DDT Pro.
He went to DDT
earlier this
Pro,
year.
Had a match, just recently with Maki Ito.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And it's all wildly entertaining stuff. Remember there was a tweet that went out from him a while ago. And he said, to promoters out there, I'll work with any of you. Bring me something interesting to do, because everything he's done out there has been that. It's been interesting. You see how many people are putting titles on him.
Yeah.
I'm sure he probably comes with a decent sized, payout. But if you can afford it and you have something interesting for him, evidently he'll work with you. And man, this guy, he's just really next level creative. I love to see it. And it'll be interesting to see if the WWE ever does come calling again, what tact they would take with him.
Yeah. I mean, because publicly he's said he'd be willing to listen to WWE. And I don't know if that's how much of that is genuine versus how much of that is to kind of amplify his character.
It could be both,
Yeah, totally. As sports entertainment guy on the independents,
Yeah.
You would hope that if WWE were interested in potentially bringing him back, now that he's got a lot of buzz around him, it wouldn't be just, oh, hey, Zack Ryder's back.
Right, yeah.
Let him continue on with what he's created post-release and see what he can do with that back in the world of sports entertainment.
Could
He
you
find a different angle to take? He come in and be like, "Hey, have you heard? Deathmatch King's here,"
Well, you could do that.
and
You
subvert
could,
that
yeah.
expectation.
No, a million, absolutely, 1,000%. I mean, he can come in and say, "I'm the king of the independents," and come in with all those titles, and it's like, holy shit, this guy is bringing all these indie titles to WWE. That's crazy, and he can like put them up and squash jobbers. There's a number of things he can do, and the thing about WWE right now is they are letting characters be more interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Like Zack Ryder was so, as a character, lobotomized. He was like, there was nothing there. They wouldn't let him do anything. And so now that he's like a fully formed person outside, if they bring him in, I would love to think that they would, at the very least, allow him to retain his personality that he's doing out there. I mean, I really would suspect that would be a prereq for, discussing a comeback with WWE. He seems to be doing just fine without him.
Oh yeah.
But I think, going from the guy who was, former WWE star, and that's his gimmick, going back into the WWE, there's a lot of interesting stuff they could do with him. It's just a matter of would they. I mean, the idea of him coming into NXT, even maybe,
Yeah.
like, could you imagine? Could you imagine if the next Performance Center class picture, if he's there wearing the gray shirt?
Yeah.
Like, that could be outstanding.
That'd be
Like,
pretty hilarious.
the guy, indie legend Matt Cardona's finally made it
They
to
actually
WWE.
have him go through, for to advance the story, have him go through tryouts.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
That'd be pretty hilarious.
That could be awesome. There's a number of
Pretty
things they
awesome.
could do if they're willing to sort of look outside the box a little bit. This
Totally.
could be wildly over if he does.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been a magnificent reinvention for Matt Cardona. It really
it
has been.
It absolutely has been.
Let's move on to number 3.
3.
Raven.
Come on, Raven. It's hard to believe that in 1994, he was Johnny Polo, a manager
Yeah.
in WWE.
It's weird. Yeah.
He had he's wearing the sweaters. He's like super preppy, sweaters.
Kind of
around
like a
his
Mean Street
shoulders.
Posse guy before Mean
Kind of,
Street
yeah,
Posse.
yeah. Leaves WWE. Year later, debuts, and he's unrecognizable.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Completely unrecognizable as Raven.
Mm-hmm.
And, he's got the leather jacket. His hair's all long in his face. He's got a bunch of piercings. He's got like the tattered jean shorts.
Yeah.
He sits and sulks in the corner.
Mm-hmm.
Got the Doc Martens on.
Yeah.
Talk about a complete reinvention.
Yeah.
In a lot of respects, I don't know, at least in terms of the aesthetics of what he was doing versus what he ended up doing, we've seen anything more different than this.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, there's some weird outliers like what do they call Just Incredible when he was in WWE?
Oh, Aldo Montoya.
Yeah, to Just Incredible. But in terms of the success level that Raven achieved, when long after I got into wrestling, going down one of those, black holes on the internet, it's like, oh, well, yeah, what did Raven do beforehand? I'm like, Johnny Polo. Or it might have been like watching one of them old WCW videotapes and be like,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
is that Raven?
Yeah.
Or
Scotty Flamingo.
WWF ones. Yeah, Scotty Flamingo, yeah. ECW, they were really good at least one thing, and that's sort of capturing the zeitgeist. As much as Vince McMahon wanted Monday Night Raw to be like, oh, we need to read the headlines. Nobody cares about the headlines. What's going on in the popular culture?
Yes.
Grunge music.
Yeah.
And the comic book shirts, the docs, all that stuff. It's like, oh, he looks like somebody who's cool now. As opposed to if you're looking at WWF at the time, it's like nobody there looks cool.
No, this is early mid 90s where basically nothing in the company was cool.
Right. You
Seemed
look at
cool.
It's like, why do these people all look like they're stuck in 1989?
Exactly.
It's like there was a massive change in the culture between 1991 and 1993. Like the style, the fashion, the music, it's all different. It's completely different between those 2 years. And Raven in ECW, and then of course he made a successful jump to WCW. what was emblematic of that. Like he was, it was like, okay, wow, this guy, this just feels fresh. It feels new. It feels now. It feels like something I'd see now. Whereas WWF was just like
over the top cartoonish characters, and this was a guy who would sit and sulk, and vent in a really kind of poetic way on the mic, as opposed to, again, doing over the top cartoonish stuff.
He was angst incarnate.
He was. Which really tapped into, as you mentioned, the zeitgeist of the time. Totally.
It did. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, just and one of my, man, the fact that WCW dropped the ball so hardcore with so many
massively with Raven. Yeah, I know.
With Raven, with all the man, they had such a terrific youth core, and they could have had their own. But they didn't. Whatever. Anyways, Raven was great, man. He was awesome.
Oh, Raven was awesome. It was my favorite in WCW.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
he's so good.
Let's move on to number 2. Drew McIntyre. This guy looked like a whole other human being when he came back to WWF.
He did. WWE. So Vince anointed him as the chosen one, and didn't exactly deliver on the lofty expectations during his first tenure in WWF. Left.
God damn it.
And went out and went seemingly everywhere. Was it that first promo he dropped after he got released by WB in ICW, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, whoa, where has this been?
Right. Yeah.
Where has this been? And he went to Impact. He wrestled for WCPW. He wrestled everywhere. He was out there working, getting better, putting on like 40 pounds of muscle, growing a great beard.
Yeah.
And just completely reinventing who he was as a professional wrestling performer.
Yeah.
And, I remember we went to the WCPW show in Orlando, WrestleMania weekend, WrestleMania 33. We had to leave early to go to the Internet Darlings thing, I believe. And I remember you went to the bathroom, I think, or I snuck out first or something like that. And giant Drew McIntyre, 6'5", 250-something pounds, pure muscle, stand there talking to somebody. And you're like, this dude, it's like seeing Billy Gunn in person.
Yeah.
This dude is humongous. Not just tall, but just a humongous human being.
Yeah.
And it seems like when he left and he came back to NXT, he found out how to carry himself in terms of projecting his character in the same fashion as you can't take your eyes off him. He's humongous.
Right. Yeah.
But now he has the character to match that, which he didn't necessarily have before.
Yeah.
Kind of felt like, yes, he was a huge jacked guy, but he kind of like faded to the background far too often. He was in 3-man band, for heaven's sakes.
Yeah. Dude, there's something to be said about a performer who goes through some shit, And I honestly think that sometimes in wrestling, and I mean, this applies to a lot of things, but especially wrestling because of what we cover, sometimes leaving and going through some shit, you come back a completely different person. And he physically completely reinvented himself. He looks like a whole different person. But it's the same with our number 1. If these people had never left, I don't know, there is complacency, there's being well fed, and then there's hunger. And there's a chip on your shoulder. And those things can completely change people. Sometimes for the worse, but oftentimes for the better. And you look at Drew McIntyre as a perfect example of that. He was given everything on a silver platter. He wasn't hungry for anything. And they didn't know what to do with him. They put him in 3-man band. And when he got released, it simply unlocked something.
Yeah.
And it gave him that hunger. And it turned him into the person that I think WWE wanted him to be. And he came back as like 5 times that even.
Yeah.
And since then he's been undeniable. It is a shame, and everybody says this, and it's part of his story right now, that he became world champion in front of an audience of none in the Performance Center, and then he was champion in front of a bunch of TV screens. But given that he's in the middle of another personality change, a heel turn, assuming his contract situation with WWE is resolved, I could totally see him maybe even being the guy that takes the world title off of Seth Rollins when that happens.
Entirely possible. I'm looking over here at his Wikipedia page. So after he left, he went to Evolve. He won the title there. He was a tag champ with Johnny Gargano.
That's interesting.
he went to ICW and won a bunch of titles there, or won the heavyweight title there twice. Of course, all his accomplishments in Impact, and then WCPW. Like, he just went everywhere and wrestled. He was in PWG.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was a good time to do that because at the time, especially with, the normalization of wrestling on YouTube and getting the, the using the social media aspect of things, which really blew up around that time.
Yeah.
It was, the proliferation of the independents before AEW really just blew up. Like, the independents just absolutely blew up. And you could get exposure thanks to social media because of that. So much more exposure, and you can make a lot more money doing that. So yeah, I mean, and he sort of, because he was released in, what was it, 2014?
Yeah.
Because he sort of provided the template for a guy, somebody who can go out, reinvent yourself, and then come back successfully.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And nobody did that better than number one. Cody Rhodes, baby. He created the modern day competition for the WWE. He did no less than the impossible. But if you look at his, I do think that there were a couple routes for Cody Rhodes. Even in WWE, he was reinventing himself.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Several times over. Yeah.
Right. That being said, to ask for your release, to go away, and I don't know if you ever saw his documentary. I'll be frank, should be Oscar-winning documentary, not just for best documentary, but maybe even best film. He left and just decided to do that exact same thing, because I think he left in 2016.
2016, yeah.
And Drew McIntyre had provided the template.
Yep.
You go out there and you just put yourself everywhere. And you do it on your terms. Hey, I'm Cody Rhodes. I'm a guy who was with WWE for a long time. Use me, but I'm going to do things my way. And he was able to get that with most promoters. Joined the hottest act, Bullet Club. Had a little tiny logo on his boots. And he so expertly knew what the map was.
Yeah.
To reinvent yourself, who to align with.
Yep.
And then, magic happened in AEW, man.
Yeah. No, he knew where the momentum was shifting in the world of professional wrestling. And he followed that momentum. Mm-hmm. And became friends with the Elite, joined Bullet Club, formed a damn company with him.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first time WWE's had real stiff competition in probably 2 decades.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then he was like, we still don't know the exact nature of why he left AEW. You might never know that.
Mm-hmm.
But, if no other reason, he want to go back and accomplish probably what he set out to do when he first said, I'm going to be a pro wrestler, which is become a champion. In WWE, something his dad never got to do.
Mm-hmm.
There could be a kernel of actual truth to that, not just used for story purposes.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
And now he's getting an opportunity to do that as probably the most popular babyface in all of wrestling right now.
Yeah. 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 It is again, a new template for people to follow. I'm not saying everybody can go and start a new company.
Not everybody can go join Bullet Club.
But it is evidence that, well, these days they can.
Yeah, I guess they can. Yeah, seemingly.
It is evidence that these are, you probably don't want to.
At least House of Torture.
You probably want to go to United Empire, someplace else.
Yeah.
Five Guys. But, he did the bucket list thing, which, just took what Drew McIntyre did and put it out there for his fans. Hey, these are things that I want to do. These are interesting to me outside of WWE. And everybody copied that. Everybody started doing bucket lists.
He knew how to capitalize on social media.
He did. Yeah.
Because that was one of the first things he put up was, all right, I'm leaving. This is what I want to accomplish. Mm-hmm. He had 10, 12, 15 things on there. And you see each of those things. You're like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's different. I wouldn't expect that from Cody. Oh, he's challenging himself with this or that,
Yeah. Yeah.
And it raises expectations. Oh, this could actually be interesting, as opposed to guy who left because he's dissatisfied with his spot in the company. No, Cody wants to go out and get better. He wants to prove himself.
Yeah, exactly. It was evidence that, he's not just sad that he's Stardust. He wants to do so much more, and this is what he wants to do, and it's a very ambitious list.
Yeah, you counter, or you look at the kind of the opposite extreme of that with someone like Ryback, who left WWE. It's like, here's my payout. Yeah. Who wants to book me?
Let's go to El Pollo Loco.
Exactly.
That sounds good. I'm so hungry right now. But yeah, Ryback. Let me grab the cheapest webcam I can find and get on Twitch with my webcam ill-framed.
Exactly, for the my 5 regular viewers.
Yeah. Golly. I don't want to dump on anybody, but that would be kind of a funny list of wrestlers who had top 10 wrestlers who had no desire to reinvent themselves after getting released. Number 1, Ryback.
Ryback just doubling down everything he was doing in WWE.
Yep. So anyways, yeah, Cody Rhodes, and then he came back with the most complex. Boy, that guy had some. He really had all the leverage there. I'm a founder of AEW, the son of Dusty Rhodes, history in WWE, left on amicable terms. I've got this gimmick that completely and totally fits in WWE and kind of doesn't fit in AEW.
Not at the time, no.
But man, oh man, they really rolled out the red carpet for him. Boy, oh boy, and it's benefited everybody. And even now, it's not like the guy's not putting in the work. He's everywhere. He's gonna be on NXT. Boy, that NXT Dynamite face-off next week is gonna be something.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that on News Brief here. We shoot that a little bit.
Pretty darn interesting.
It's gonna be something else. I've got a couple of honorable mentions here. Got to mention Juice Robinson. He's come a long way from being CJ Parker in NXT.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yes.
And what he's doing now, rock hard stuff.
Hilarious.
So good.
Good stuff.
He's going in the ring, lifting his leg like he's peeing on people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Absolutely.
Bully Ray or Bubba Ray Dudley, depending what name you want to use. Somebody who, of course, known predominantly as a tag team specialist for a vast majority of his career, went to Impact and made himself essentially their Brock Lesnar.
He did. Yeah, I've always admired because he got in really good shape.
Yeah.
And yeah, he turned himself from Bubba Ray into Bully Ray. Is that what it was? Bubba Ray Dudley.
Yeah, it's Bully Ray into
Bully Ray. Yeah, you got to give it to the guy. The aces and eights stuff, say what you will about it. It propelled him, I guess, up to whatever.
He feud with Hulk Hogan. So
I didn't really watch Impact at the time, but I saw a lot of clips, and I was like, oh, he's kind of legit. That's cool for him,
Yeah. Of course, we got to mention Jeff Jarrett. Went from country musician early in his tenure in WWE, and then look at him now. He's the most important figure in the entire wrestling business.
Yeah.
Jeff Jarrett.
I will say this, though. Like, if you're looking at 98 Jeff Jarrett, not a lot's really changed since then. He just got older and funnier.
Yeah, now. But, like, you watch what he was doing at WWE, and then when he went to WCW that he started changing character.
Yeah. And then back to WWF is what you're talking about. Like, from when he was doing the country music stuff.
Yeah.
And then he went to WCW. Boy, he went back and forth a lot.
But even really like when he went back before he left for good, there was elements there, but he wasn't doing the slap nuts thing. Was he in WWF?
He started doing the slap nuts thing in WCW after he left for good. Didn't he?
Yeah.
Or was the slap? So. Did he start the slap? I mean, I feel like the seeds of the slap nut stuff was in WWF because he was hitting everybody with the guitar.
Yeah.
Like that element was there. I just think he came up with the slap nuts thing in WCW. I think
so. I could be wrong. If not, if he did that in WWE, then he's off this list because then he's pretty much the same thing. Just
yeah. But I love Jeff Jarrett. He's great.
Oh, Jeff's great.
Enough of a reinvention for me is that I didn't love him then, and now I love him.
Exactly.
Boom.
Same.
There you go. Yeah, absolutely. Anyways, that's going to do it. Let us know what you guys think in the comments below. Hey, who are some other wrestlers that we might have missed on this list that reinvented themselves after leaving WWF? Yeah, do that. And then we'll talk about it maybe amongst ourselves. Not on the show.
No, this show's over. We're not redoing this. At least
Show's
not for a
over.
few years.
Yeah. Hit that subscribe button.